Hello guys, and welcome to a new little series that I'm going to do called Paddock Talk, and we're going to go through and just run through some of the latest gossip, what's going on, some of the news leading up to race day, and I'm sort of trying to keep this as relevant when there's some big news and some good stuff to share with you. And yeah, let's go straight into it. And I'm going to talk about the first one, Logan Sargeant having that big crash in FP1. I mean, this is a big one, isn't it, really? Because Logan, under a bit of pressure, really, hasn't he? He got the car taken away from him in Australia. They just about got that fixed, and he's having the fixed car. Alex Albon's keeping the good, fresh chassis. And there was still a bit of like, ooh, should really Logan have his chassis back now? And you know, give Albon the sort of semi-fixed, or well, it's a fixed chassis, isn't it? But the damaged one, so to speak. But Williams have sort of said, no, Logan, you're having it. You are effectively their second driver, aren't they? They've pretty much said as much in terms of their actions rather than the words, although they're saying all the right things in the media to say they're backing Logan and, you know, he's the man, but quite clearly he's not. And they've actually made the right choice, haven't they? He went out in FP1, did 6 laps and crashed, and quite a big crash. He missed FP2, and they were really probably sweating it, weren't they? Because if they damaged the chassis, that was it. Another Williams car doesn't race in the Japanese Grand Prix, and this time it would have been Alex Albon's taking that car, quite obviously, because it's Logan who smashed it. And he's just heaped a load of pressure on himself, hasn't he? A lot of talk as to say, has his mind gone now because of what happened in Australia? He's just sort of turned around and said, no, it was just a mistake, silly mistake. He didn't really realise where he was on the track, which actually saying that just makes it worse, doesn't it? Very, very amateur and rookie to say, oh, I actually didn't know where I was on track. I just floored it, half the car on the grass, lost it, and yeah, a really, really poor mistake for someone that's now got a season under his belt. Last season he would have been forgiven for these mistakes. This season, clearly not. Williams clearly struggling with getting parts built. They were already on the back foot, and they cannot afford, and the finances and everything that comes with that. They don't want to be just wasting money on repairing cars, and it seems like that's what they're doing. It's the cracked gearbox, extensive damage on that car for Logan, and it's really, really set him back, hasn't it? And let's see where it goes from there, because Logan is going to just even more pressure, and this is one where now it's almost coming to the point where how long do Williams give it before they just sort of say, yeah, you're gone, get someone else in that seat? Because honestly, if it was Red Bull, I imagine he wouldn't have got this seat this season, and you can't really see how Williams are backing Logan in this sense. He's clearly the number 2 driver. Where does he really go from here? And it'd be interesting to see how this one pans out, but I really can't see him, sadly for Logan fans, making it to the end of the season the way it's going at the minute. He really needs to pull some, you know, magical results out from here, and let's hope he can do that, because it'd be sad to see anyone lose their seat in Formula 1, isn't it, at the minute? And then moving on from that, it's the McLaren, isn't it? Another reshuffle. David Sanchez, who signed from Ferrari just 3 months ago. They hailed this, you know, really big signing, along with Rob Marsh from Red Bull, that was leading their new technical team, isn't it? A 3-pronged department that heads, or 3 heads that sit together and work things out. And they've just said it was misalignment, isn't it, of David Sanchez, and they've all sort of played it out of it. It's very nice. Oh yeah, it's sad it doesn't work out. And David's saying, yeah, I'm glad they've kind of just let me go, because it looks like he was promised one job, given something completely different when he's got his feet under the table, and he wasn't happy with it at all, was it? And it's lasted just 3 months, so another big reshuffle. And strange actually, because everyone was really hailing McLaren's new idea of the kind of the real way to go, isn't it? We've seen Alpine, what they've drastically done wrong, and they're looking at McLaren and thinking this is the right way to go, but actually McLaren realigning things, saying we've got it wrong. Are Alpine now making the right decision with doing what McLaren have tried to do and got wrong? yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. They've got a new man coming in at McLaren, and David Sanchez leaves. Where does he end up? He's only been at McLaren 3 months, so I don't think he'll have a massive gardening leave. Well respected in the field, and I'm sure he'll find somewhere soon enough. But yeah, interesting that the way that's just panned out, that because McLaren have actually performed really well, haven't they? All their upgrades throughout last season were absolutely tremendous. Everything worked. They're not having the correlations issues that we've seen at Mercedes, and they can only be commended for that. And it should really only get better because they've now got their own wind tunnel operational. Before they were renting, and you know, all the faff that goes with that. So going forward now, McLaren should be in a much better place. And the new one actually is the new livery they've got for Japan. I actually really quite like this one. A really little funky little design that they've got going on here. Just special livery for the Japanese Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I think it looks brilliant. Just add a bit of splash of colour, and it's nice that they do that when they go to different venues. And sticking on to sort of livery design, Charles Leclerc has paid tribute to his godfather, isn't it, Jules Bianchi, who actually sadly passed away following a crash in Suzuka in 2014. This is his 10-year anniversary, and he's paid tribute with a special helmet design for him for this weekend. I think this is a really, really nice touch. Someone that's really close to Charles. You know, he's effectively granted Jules as the man that got him into Formula One, so it's really nice to see that he's still paying tribute to him, and it's a really, really nice touch. And moving on to the big one actually for this weekend was the Vettel to Mercedes talk that's sort of fired up from nowhere, hasn't it? You know, this Mercedes seat is really hot property, and I can see why Toto Wolff is sort of playing the long game here, isn't he? We all know his real man that he wants is Max Verstappen. He was absolutely gutted he missed out on him years ago when he signed for Red Bull instead. You know, they tracked Verstappen and just didn't have the seat for him or the space for him, did they, at that time? And I think Toto's kind of kicking himself still for that. So and they've obviously got this gem in coming up in Kimi Antonelli, hasn't they? So that they really don't want to lose, and then who do they put in there now? Is it too early to put him in there? So yeah, Vettel in an interview with Sky Sports really promoting an energy drink that he was working on, and announcing that he is looking into the working back into potentially into Formula One, isn't he? He did kind of say that, didn't he? He's been speaking to Toto, not completely directly about taking a racing seat, but about other things. Rumours are that he's looking to go into the World Endurance Championship and race for Porsche. Now the big thing here really is Vettel retired from Formula One because of the time it takes away from family time and all the likes of that, because it's a grueling long season in Formula One, isn't it? A lot of media commitments and stuff like that, so happily retired, whereas the World Endurance Championship lets him have that sort of balance with family life and racing. It'll be interesting to see how that talk comes out, but yeah, for Seb fans, absolutely exciting news, isn't it, with the prospect? Could he have a 4-time German champion in a German car at Mercedes? A great storyline. We've seen it with Michael Schumacher, came back, didn't he, and went into that Mercedes. It was, as a Schumacher fan myself, I was absolutely over the moon with it. Didn't really quite go to plan for him, but there was some special moments. Obviously, when he stuck it on pole in Monaco, obviously he got the 5-second penalty or 5-place grid penalty from the race before, and that put him back there. But yeah, he still had the magic within him, didn't he? Especially over one lap, and he pulled off some special results. But overall, it wasn't a fantastic return, was it? And Mercedes, really, would they want to go there, or is it just another name to throw in the mix? Because I think really they're after, if they can, is Max Verstappen. But Max is kind of holding up the whole driver market at the moment, isn't he? Because it's sort of like when he makes his move, if he makes his move from Red Bull, I mean, he's got a long contract there, so but there's a lot going on within that Red Bull team at the moment, especially leadership up at the top, and that Max is sort of flexing his sort of power and muscles in there, isn't he, as well? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Is Vettel just another name that Mercedes is happy to throw in there, just try and potentially rush Verstappen a little bit into a decision of potentially making a move over to Mercedes? It'd be interesting to see how this plays out, and it looks like it's going to be a long season for this driver, silly season, isn't it? We normally get things tied up, especially we've got 13 drivers without a contract next season. So there's a lot to mess about. There's some young talent that have come up and done absolutely brilliantly. Liam Lawson, Ollie Berman did a fantastic job. So yeah, we've got Carlos Sainz out of a seat. We've got, Max potentially wanting to move, Sergio Perez on the last term of his contract. So there's, 3 big seats really there, with the 2 in potentially at Red Bull, the Mercedes seat. The only teams that have sort of tied up are Mclaren and Ferrari up front, but everybody else has got a race seat available, hasn't they? And there's a lot of young promising drivers, some old heads, some champions that are moving and got, out of contract at the end of the season. So there's a lot of play here. So it'll be interesting to see how that one pans out at the end. And finally, the big one I really wanted to talk about actually was the Russell and Alonso incident. Now that's taken a turn, hasn't it, after the Japanese Grand Prix, the driver interviews that they started. And it all started with George Russell sort of dropping himself in it a bit here, hasn't he? Because there's been a lot of mixed talk within the drivers about this penalty. Some saying, yes, it was probably the right thing to do, Ocon, George Russell clearly, but Lando, Norris sort of saying it was already quite clear what we could do with defending, and now with the ruling that they've got and the penalty that Alonso got, it's not clear at all. So yeah, there was Max Verstappen was clearly unhappy about that, was sort of saying, didn't really show any cards of where he stands on this, but sort of said we'll discuss it within the driver briefings where all the drivers get together ahead of the race weekend with the stewards, and to iron out where everyone stands. Now the big one here was George Russell was saying effectively that he was looking down at his steering wheel making brake adjustments into the braking zone, and when he looked up he was right on Alonso's gearbox, and effectively he got caught out and lost it. Which makes the Alonso penalty even harsher. And when you look at the replays and you look at the onboard of George Russell, he definitely is twiddling around with his steering wheel. And interesting, the stewards didn't consider it when they've looked at the onboard or seen the telemetry of the car that George was fiddling around, and sort of got more surprised by what Alonso did rather than what Alonso actually did. We all know that Alonso didn't really brake test George Russell, but what he did was just hold the apex a bit to put George off a bit, and then take a slingshot and go to build a gap so he doesn't get him out of the DRS zone a little bit, or just knock him back a little bit. What actually happened was George was not expecting it at all, head down on his steering wheel, looked up and had to take evasive action and lost it. Now the real reason why this was investigated is clearly because of the incident and how big it ended up with the big crash, and George ended up in the middle of the circuit. Had it not been for that, 100% sure that this wouldn't have been investigated. But this really throws another one in the mix now, and the problem that we have is that the period where Aston Martin can appeal the result is shortened. It's only 4 days now, where it was 2 weeks, and now the time has elapsed for Aston Martin to do anything about that. But I'm sure if they had more time, they'd probably really consider making some sort of complaint here, potentially, as to say, look, there's some new evidence that come to light. Did the stewards really consider this when making the decisions? And I imagine, there's possible that appeal could have gone in and we could have seen the result overturned, but that's not going to be possible now. The time limit for that's all gone, and the FIA are really quite rigid, and the stewards are really rigid in applying that in terms of the new evidence sort of thing, so to speak, isn't it, of being available. It has to be. It was almost there's nothing available because the stewards are saying we've got all the telemetry and everything was available to us. They could have considered it, but didn't deem it necessary. And so they can always get a get out of jail free card, haven't they, when they sort of blatantly miss or cock up a decision like that. So yeah, very, very interesting that sort of Russell dropped that ball a little bit. It was interesting to see what comes out of it and how these sort of incidents are going to be stewarded over the next time these incidents sort of come along. But yeah, there's some thoughts out there that I wanted to talk, but a go ahead ahead of this weekend. But yeah, we should be in for a brilliant Japanese Grand Prix, isn't it? We've had mixed conditions as it looks at the minute. Mercedes look massively strong for race day, don't they? Especially looking at free practice, where the cooler conditions have really suited their car. Third and fourth in free practice 3. Free practice 2 was basically washed out, wasn't it? It doesn't really count for much in FP1. Yeah, not a bad start for Mercedes. So interesting. I had them as being the one that they're going to be writing off for so far for this weekend, but it's gone well for so far. But let's see how it works out. But yeah, some interesting points there on the first episode of Paddock Talks. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment as always. I'll see you next time.